further ado, I will pass you over to John.
Thanks very much. Hello, my name is John. I'm a PhD student researching within the Contemporary Art Research Centre. I thought I'd just start with a very quick introduction, a small introduction about my PhD. The title of my project is an investigation into the capture and public display of the Acton Town otter. And this project is about a strange and little known part of London transport history, which is the capture and public display of wildlife killed at the time of electrification of the Underground Railway during its expansion into suburbia at the start of the 20th century. In my research, I'm fictioning a journey through a group of West London railway territories that exist on the edges of canals and motorways. This journey, it takes the form of a psychogeographic circular drift. And by doing this, I aim to engage audiences with research into surreal forms of animality, camouflage, deception, and storytelling. Through this, I also aim to contribute an alternative narrative cultural history, one that addresses the effects of the District Line expansion into suburbia at the beginning of the 20th century. And this allows my project to explore contemporary perceptions of power, control, and marginalisation within the broader cultural context. My investigation, it starts with a photograph of an exhibition of stuffed animals that took place at Charing Cross Underground Station in 1929, including a female otter, which was captured at Acton Town Station on the 4th of April, 1911. This exhibition, it also took place at Mansion House Underground Station from 1914 and is referenced in Charles Peirce's iconic 1915 Underground Electric publication, An Alphabet of Tot, which is trains, omnibus and trams. Why was there an otter at Acton Town Station in the first place? Why was she then stuffed and put on public display? And where is she now? Starting with these photographs, my quest for the Acton Town otter raises the following questions. What can we learn by looking at animals on the railway? What can we learn by investigating the presence and absence of animals in urban space? The exhibition of stuffed animals at underground stations in the early 1900s shows the authority the new electrification had over London wildlife. What can we learn by restaging this exhibition? My research is positioned within the fields of psychogeography and field recording, and within these fields, the project is situated in the areas of literary London fiction, cultural London history, walking, DIY sound production, soundscape composition, and sound foley. I work for London Underground. I've had 15 years on the stations. I'm currently a station supervisor at Acton Town going up to Hounslow Central. And being a London Underground employee has been an ideal stage to operate in these fields. It's allowed me to uniquely position a narrative from the perspective of a railway worker and has enabled opportunities to inhabit and record hidden underground spaces at night, a territory which is not accessible to the public. Today, I'm going to present and test out my ideas on the connections between writing and musical composition, using different combinations of hand-drawn scores, song, stories, and DIY sound production. An experimental approach to voice, narrative, and sound collage is central to my methodology. I'm asking what happens when text is punctured by sound? How does the use of sound change the narrative? In particular, the research tests combinations of sound collage, narrative, and voice. Do the three strands, the voice, the narrative, and the sound collage work differently? What is the grammar that each uses? Can they be separated or are they inseparable? What is the nature of exchange between the three? A lot of my thinking, my method, my approach reflects on ideas of listening by engaging with the side B of writing, the demos, the samples, the things that fall off the page and end up at the bottom. It's often the best bits when the pressure is off. So I'll present for approximately 40 minutes, and there'll be a bit of time afterwards for an open discussion at the end. I've put up some references in the chat, but I can forward anything on afterwards as well. I'm going to use a series of props, a bit like a table display. Don't worry if you miss things or if things don't come out clearly. I'm using them to make combinations with my writing and to puncture the narrative of my script. So it might be a case of if we just kind of roll with it. But if there is a complete breakdown, then yeah, I mean, do let me know. Okay, thanks very much. And now I'm gonna start. This is my field, a West London Underground railway station at night. 2 platforms, a PA speaker system, no announcements, a ticket hall, a gate line, an exit and entry system, public toilets out of order, no step-free access, an emergency exit. It's the night shift, so we have mice. This is me, a station super, booked on for the first of 7 engineering hours, a lone worker, in charge of locking up and opening the gates, of signing in the contractors, of seeing in and seeing out the last and first trains, waking up the passengers. Can you hear them? Every month, 7 nights in a row, on repeat, on roster, a routine, broken by holidays, cover weeks or phoning in sick. This is my field, working in underground railway stations at night. It's where I go to listen. I conduct sound walks through the empty station. I am attentive. I tell myself, be open, be aware. I listen to how sound is shaped by the space. I follow my ears. Different sounds mix and combine as I pass through the various spaces. I walk on concrete, ballast, metal, wood, vegetation. It's a strange experience, listening to an empty railway station at night. I walk in silence, noticing things, a spider's web, coffee dregs, a leftover piece of chicken leg. And did you know the underground is full of electromagnetic sounds? It must be the mice. Can you believe it? A Savoy sausage on top of ballast. I stop in my tracks. What a strange thing to see. How did it get here? Who could have left it? I must admit, I can't keep my eyes off it. It's so big and smooth. And what colour? What shall I do, I say out loud. If only I had someone to help me. Help me, I shout, but I should have known better. Mice like me can't be heard, even when they're shouting. What about you? The crow who hops up and down all night long, and I know can't wait to just peck my Savoy to pieces. What about you, crow, I squeak, but the crow doesn't reply. With no one to turn to for advice, I make my own bold decisions. I look from left to right, listening out for hostile footsteps or fast-moving engineering trains. I bend down and pick up the Savoy. I grip it between my fingers like a sailor would a trophy fish, freshly caught from sea, and hang it across my neck. I run away from the flashlights and meatheads, shouting in the section ahead. Yes, I say, yes, now I can see you too. Later, I ask the Savoy, what are you doing here? Are you lost? Or are you waiting for someone? But the Savoy does not reply. Look, I'm here to help, I say. At night in the station, I stage imaginative listening inventions. These inventions nearly always fail, which is part of the fun in doing them. Mostly, they are just interrupted. Contractors needing to be booked on, a neighbouring station supervisor lonely, bored and phoning up for a chat, the metro delivery, a lost property collection. It is important I do the actual recording and that the sounds come from being out in my field. I don't want to utilise sound from sound libraries. If I need the sound of a pigeon, I record at night on the platforms at Hounslow East. coo, 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 coo. My journey to and from work is circular and repetitive. I repeat and go round in circles. I've been doing this for years. The last car of the Piccadilly line is my library. I read the lines of my novel as the train travels the running rails. Landscapes fly past the window like movable stage sets at the theatre, being spun around on the revolving stage. As the train travels straight on the lines, my mind waves and tries to navigate the composition of words on the page. The rectangle of windows keep displaying fresh new images. Outside is improvisation, a dreaming made up of buildings, spaces, and shop front lights, tree arms and spider legs, house patch and garden plots. Houses sinking down, trees suddenly shooting up out of the earth. At Hammersmith, we all take out our mobile phones and start to text and blow our noses. Times like this, I feel like a rabbit. I hop from station to station, I duck down tunnels and then onto the embankments. As I pass, I shit out brown pellets, leaving my trail. Try this. 01:30 hours at Hounslow Central, and I'm drawing on the back of the Piccadilly line timetable. The drawings are from Kafka's short story, The Burrow. I draw lines, shapes, and mark out words as indications, hints, allusions. Later, Phil will track the score with his guitar, his fingers following the movement of Kafka's giant mole. Tea, sir, I ask? Not with a dead rat downstairs, you say. So it's like that, is it? Then tea shall wait. You say, open the shed door immediately and take the brown pole, the one that looks like a shovel, the one that's used for chewing gum, and march left, right, left, a ferocious pace, down the steps, mind the raindrops, and proceed to plot 7. Legs astride and wide apart, buttocks clenched, old chap, think military Russian ex-bear, officer class. Pivot one's head to one side and heave-ho, up and scrape. Propel our rats into the pit. Exhale. Now remember, the circular clearly states tests are to be carried out Friday, 1300 hours. But what does it all mean? I say, why was the rat dead? Who killed it? And why can't I stop holding my breath? I am not looking for a polite, non-reverberant sound. I am not after corporate, uniform, efficient audio. I want waves of unnecessary sounds. I reject signal-like clarity. I don't want my sound collages to be polished or mixed to perfection by a professional sound mixer in a recording studio at 500 quid a day. I want to mix in the bedroom, DIY style, in the cupboard, in the mess room. Twist a dial in an old music box and record whilst pressing the capture button on a police surveillance body camera. I play a scratched I Was Dora Suarez vinyl and then press record with my tape recorder. I press fast forward, rewind, and then press the pause button lightly with an extra light touch so the tape is still recording. I capture distortion mixed with a stutter of Derek Raymond's voice, a particular London voice that is no longer heard. I mix my field recordings of Picardas recorded from an Athens balcony with the electromagnetic sounds of Hans Louis ticket machines. I play a glockenspiel unsuccessfully. I play my harmonica for 30 minutes, but forget to press record. I use keyboards, loop pedals, sampler app, a cassette player. I work quickly. All my equipment is laid out on the floor in front of me. I shut all the windows to block outside sounds and so that the neighbours can't hear what I'm doing. I use a foot chime and a hand rattle that I brought from the percussion shop in Store Street. I take covers off the light bulbs and use my back detector to record. I imagine static falling from the ceiling and into my lap. I use a pigeon whistle and I breathe in, I exaggerate my breathing. I listen again to the constant buzz of the cicadas. I make the sound of a fish. First I'm a goldfish, and then I'm a cod. I use my loop pedal and using my hydrophone microphone, record the sound of speaking whilst wearing a snorkel in a bathtub. As I mix, I listen and play again, listen, play again, constantly repeating, returning always to the beginning of the timeline. I listen, add on, delete, take away, add on more, take away, stand back, look away, re-listen. I force myself to look away from the timeline. My eye is on the mixing screen. The energy builds. I make a first version. I cut it up and add samples. I bounce it and have a listen. I think about including any of the short recordings that haven't been used. I read my list of scored out sounds. I cut out and add in. I try to pull submerged sounds up to the surface again. I listen and re-listen to my samples. I get to know the sounds. I try to learn the material. I cut up, I cut, copy and paste. I repeat, I duplicate. I cut into. I repeat lines on different levels. I mix with volumes. I shade and blend and cut. I make panels, sections. I string them together in a line. I build in areas where not much is happening to create room, space within the soundscape. I use heavy and light hands when mixing the recording. I make a list of my recordings, and by now I have a story, which I'm introducing to the list of sounds by speaking out loud. I write a description for each sample. I go back and forth between my recordings and my stories. I start on different parts of text. I swap and change. I start making links and think about combinations. Which sounds are making conversations with each other. I listen and label my recordings. I edit and cut out beginnings and ends. Words and phrases jostle each other as they come into contact. I splice and square shapes. I cut up and cut off their edges so they're in position, ready to go into sequence with each other. I think of these sequences as paragraphs. I constantly fight an urge to pick up a wooden mallet and knock the block of audio into shape. And trimming the edges of sound files feels like the first and last lines of a story being erased, bravely edited out, and being rewarded by finding that underneath here are the best lines. This is where the story should start and finish. It feels important I write the stories during my shift. At home, I use black ink on yellow paper because that's what Brian Dillon does. But here on the underground, I work on scraps. I write loosely on the page so the words have plenty of space. Everything begins with the rebound. I first met Mr. Mole when his trousers fell down in South Ealing Ticket Hall. He was wearing another pair of trousers underneath, which was weird in itself. And as he stood there with one pair of trousers on and one pair of trousers down at his ankles, I debated within myself whether I should cross over and tell him or just to let him be, as he might be fully aware that his outer trousers were no longer attached. However, as I was debating this within myself, Mr. Mole stepped forward and fell over. I immediately rushed to him, caught him just in time, and from that day onwards, he's always stopped to have a quick chat. And although his trousers have never fallen down again, I'm never entirely sure if he is wearing one or two pairs of trousers. But I don't suppose any of this really matters. I walk up and down the platforms, repeating lines in my head. As I walk, the lines and the words change. I let this happen. My grip on the words is loose. And once I get hooked on a line, it will not leave my head. I repeat the phrase over and over again, and I won't stop repeating it until I write it down on a piece of paper, and then finally I can let go. At home, I sing them again with my partner Sissy on the floor of my front room, with the blinds drawn using an RC3 loop station. It's great fun. We do about 2 or 3 lines each. Any further and the sound becomes too dense, thick, the voice is polyphonic, and the song is lost. I sing in a low voice and lie back and think of Ivor Cutler.
It's the 21st century, British
Convention. Gay in the bank, own ya, I make ya, I break ya. Me, it's the con, stand on your own. It's the 21st century, British slavery. 40k in the bank, I own ya, I break ya, I make ya. It's a con, stand on your own. 21st century, British slavery convention. 40k in the bank, but yeah, I own ya, I make ya, I break ya. Me, it's a con, stand on your own. On your 21st century, British slavery convention. Gay in the bank, yeah, I own ya, I make ya, I break ya. Me, it's a gun, stand on your own. Keep your hands to yourself, Prince Andrew. Keep your hands to yourself, Prince Andrew. I'll cut them off. I'll cut it off. I'll cut it off. Hands to yourself, Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew.
The dog.
Prince Andrew.
It is important my stories exist purely as sound. I make a decision, a memo to myself, John, do not attempt to publish these stories. If you do, your stories will dry up, become lead and stiff, redundant. Really, what I need is CCTV. This is the plot. Go to the key cabinet, take out the special red CCTV cabinet key, go down the stairs, onto the westbound, unlock the door, and sit in the freezing cold cupboard with a dirty blue chair that everyone puts their feet on. So first, dust it off. Unlock the safe, take out the British Transport Police laptop, plug the Ethernet cables into the correct wall socket, lift up the lid as if it was a trapdoor, select the date and time, choose a selection of cameras from different views, press play, sit back with a pen in hand and a piece of paper on the table, rewind, pause, play, play back, watch, review, leave your fingerprints everywhere. Monitoring the station's CCTV screens at night is like watching a slideshow. I am awake, but my eyes are shutting down. My mind is switching off, and I'm entering sleep, switching between being on and off stage, as if I'm standing up on the platform, staring at the camera, looking back at my sleeping self. This is the life, isn't it? To be fast asleep, and yet, at the same time, able to keep a close eye on myself. The old man calls and states, son, there is a swan down below. Be a sport and investigate. Any phobias? What with swans, I reply? Governor, not that I'm aware of. Now, every time the old man phones, and increasingly he's phoning up more and more, and each request more urgent and fantastical, I undo the top button of my shirt and hold my hand across my neck and tap my tonsils with my fingers as it helps steadies one's breathing and does wonders for my ever-rising levels of fear. This man's voice lives like an army of ants in the pit of my stomach. I write the stories using my voice as a pen and rubber, as if the pen was in my mouth, clutched between my teeth and lips, and the rubber's stuffed inside my ears. I buy a microphone for my computer. I perform my stories in my bedroom. I'm wearing headphones. My voice is amplified, loud, and speaks inside between my rubber ears. This works for me as it creates a distance. The voice is no longer mine, as if it belongs to someone else, and prevents me from being too self-conscious. I play back, I rewrite, I add, I delete, I edit, I read out loud, I record. I'm using my voice to write. On playback, certain lines just don't work. Through my recorded voice, the words that only a few minutes before worked perfectly on paper can no longer stand alone. They sound wrong, flabby, unnecessary. I edit my playback. I edit by talking aloud, reading out my written words. So really, I speak as I write. It is through listening to the playback that I shape and write short stories. Next, I listen to my field recordings. I start working out compositions. I think about how the sound changes the text, how the sound relates to my voice, I start to think of the narrative, voice and sound collage as one, and how this combination is now directing the story. Why, when I speak the words out loud, the parts of the text fall flat, and some sentences have a musicality. Is it a rhyme? They sing and each word is a note. And the voice, it doesn't have to be mine, as I may have chosen or selected someone else to read, has activated and animated the line. Try this. 03:15 hours and I'm still scanning, composing on company time. I think Kafka would approve. I scan and print and feed the scanned image into the printer's paper tray. Scan, press, print, and now I print the new scanned image on top of the old one. Different tones work over each image. Image and text mix. There's layers. Accidents take place. There is bleeding. Now the toner starts to fade, and as a consequence, the tone of the piece changes. Pauses emerge whilst the text and image combination continues to be disturbed. The punchline in this nighttime performance, when I should really be putting up posters and refilling the leaflet racks, is that through all the scratching and remixing, I will not remember how the final image came about. Improvising with a photocopying machine, one lets go of each moment. Feed the paper in, shut the lid, press the button, stand back on the edge, forget everything. I look up from the flower bed and see a red-haired cowgirl with a horse attached between her legs. She sways like a tree. Now that horse, mister, I've seen you before. I call out, Ballycastle, is that you? That night in Kempton? And now what's happening? She's standing up and he's standing behind. His top hooves are inside her shirt. Why? He's taking off his trousers. Put them back on, sir, I say, at 3 o'clock in the morning. The horse looks Spanish. And now what? Yes, I do believe they're fucking up right here against the poster frame. His legs like jelly, goodness, what a scene. And I'd only just got that poster up too. He's not even taking his backpack off. I simply don't know where to look, or when to ever again look away. Round and round the flower bed they go. We've been growing potatoes for the community successfully, highly, trying to avoid the headlight of the passing trains. Good grief, he's taking ages. Hurry up, it's raining. And they try once and once again to finish off in a puddle, hurrah. How can I find the pulse of a story? First, I must release the story from the computer screen surface. I could extend my hand into the screen, open up the lid of my hard drive, have a rummage around and pull the words out one by one. In order to proceed, I need to print the words and voice the story out loud, use a different accent and volume, choose someone else to speak. And this is listening through playback, and it's how I locate the pulse of my text. What can I do if on playback a weak pulse is found? I've spoken my story out loud, but as the words come out my mouth, each one falls flat, landing back onto the page. Blobs. So what next? Can I bring a sentence back to life? Should I try turning my printer upside down? Best to scoop them up and return to the start. Detect the original, find the starting rhythm, go back to the notebook or the short piece of text, handwritten on graph paper, or the scrawled sentence, the phrase copied into the yellow post-it note, stuck in between the pages of an unread book, written here in my station supervisor's office. I think touch is key. Hold the text against the ear. A scrap, a torn page from a notebook, a drawn-out shopping list, a hand-drawn copied train timetable, a finger-tapped email on an Android phone. Take into account the font, layout, and size. And the text on the recycled paper has a timbre. Look as my fingerprints press through. Old 400 hours, and I think the station copier may now be broken. I'll re-say that. I have broken the station copy machine. Too many late nights dreaming of hanging out with Bill Griffiths on Uxbridge pubs on the Grand Union Canal. Love and hate tattooed and black ink on my knuckles. Playing the photocopying machine like a grand piano. My eyes are tired, the text overexposed. Too much material, making it noisy. Scanning and printing is a form of rewriting. We set the pages up, we feed in, and threaded through the machine's mechanism, something comes back altered that we then decide to stick or twist with or later discard. And key to this process is being receptive and open. But to listen to text, there must be space. And my composing today has not left enough space for our ears to listen. The speed of the scanner and its sound has changed. Pause, stop, copy, stop. Either we keep turning the page or we change our rhythm. Stand very still and allow our ears to scroll. Performing my stories helps me write. I use performing as a fresh way of editing my stories. Physically moving the words around the stage allows a further way in and opens up access towards a rewrite. My stories are now physical sculptural material to move, shift, and reshape. They are no longer part of the station, my night studio, or my bathroom, my darkroom. They have been revealed, and the experience has changed me. Exposed, I feel encouraged to add, delete, and move material around. Try this. Mr. J slurps a McDonald's chocolate milkshake and Mr. Mole gnaws on a leftover piece of chicken whilst telling stories to Mr. J about experimentations in railway electrification. Me, I scratch. I scratch my ears and my scalp. I bend down and scratch my legs and then my ankles. I go up to a tree and using a branch, scratch my back, rub myself up and down and bend my knees. Next, I rake my fingers up and down and across my scalp. It's as if I want to scratch out my skin. Young man, says Mr. J. Young man, stop.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if that was part of the performance.
No.
Thank you very much indeed. There's been lots of well, a little bit of conversation going on in the chat, so maybe people can unmute and ask questions or give their feedback. Maybe they can put their cameras on if they would like to chat. Lots of nice things being said in the chat. We have about 10-15 minutes. Any questions or comments or general praise? Pippa? Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me of, because there was a lot to take in, but it first thing that struck me is like reminding me of Pierre Schaeffer and music concrete. I mean, I think it went beyond that, but you know, disassociated sounds or using them as samples, if you like, to create a collage. But I mean, your sounds were associated with things, but they were also disassociated sounds. Like, what was it called? Yeah, and there's acousmatic art. I've just been looking up my old bachelor's dissertation about Pierre Schaeffer, funnily enough, and the whole thing of, phenomenology, about hearing a sound, not knowing where it comes from. Now, actually, I don't know what you think about that, because what you're doing is more phenomenology, which is conjuring up, or acousmatic listening. Sorry, I'm trying to remember which is which. Acousmatic is mental representations of memories, isn't it?
I think I mean I think with me definitely it's important I'm getting this, that I'm making the sounds myself, so it's kind of important that I'm kind of recording them, particularly at night time on the underground stations. So in a sense, I'm not taking them off the I've no desire to take sounds off the internet or things like that, or to use
exactly.
And I tend to once I've made the recording and I've used it for something, that's it. I don't want to use it again. So I'm not making an archive of sounds. It's very much use them for the and kind of as to release them, and then that's to use them up.
But definitely music. Definitely music concrete. I mean, you're recording something, as you say, yourself. Exactly that. You're not taking it from you're not taking it from an archive either. Which is exactly what Pierre Schaeffer was doing. I think he recorded the sounds, funnily enough, of a train going past. I think he was actually in a train. Do you know about?
He definitely did. He did. I think he did some really good. I mean, I know of it. He's some really. I think there's lots of people who have done some amazing train. I think there's a lot of sounds that come from trains which are quite intriguing.
Yeah.
I think so. It's but definitely I know he did a really nice piece. I think Chris Watson has done a really nice piece on trains in Mexico, I think, as well, which I really want to hear. And then you have what's the very famous one. It will come to me the name.
John Cage.
Not John Cage. No, but it will come to me. It will come to me in a second.
Fascinating. Just one last thing before I let somebody else obviously ask. Part of I'm doing a music degree, but it's an autoethnography, and in amongst it, I'm going to be putting some of my music in it. It's not going to be sounds such, it'll be complete pieces, but it's really interesting because I think the remit of your presentation was, does it work and it really does work, to tell a story. It really does. That's kind of it. Thank you, John.
Thanks a lot. I know I can see Nicola's got her hand up.
Yeah, Nicola was next. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Hello, John. Really, I've just had a wonderful time listening to you, and I just decided to let myself go and be dragged through hither and thither with it all, and try not to be too analytical. But there was a couple of things that came out for me. So I mean, it's just cheered me up no end. Just to let you know that.
That's good.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this kind of ludic quality to it, that it just feels like, what you're describing is taking a work, quite a repetitive, you talk about the circular, repetitive journeys, routines, things that have to be done, and yet underneath and around it all is this playfulness. You've turned it into a completely sort of ludic experience, but to me, what came across was a sort of the stream of consciousness of B.S. Johnson wrote a book about teaching, where he had what was going on in the classroom in one column, and then what was going on in his mind and his impressions in the next column. So there's two things going on. We do still retain a relationship to your workplace. You keep us there, but you take us into this like wonderland, underground, dreamlike night world where everything is of kind of weird proportions, and the because you're sort of it's nighttime and you're half asleep. So there's this not quite, yeah, all the connections are dreamlike, are kind of illogical, and anything can come in and just smash their way through it, and a new monster can come in and take over, and a new voice, which I just found very, it's like, don't try to understand it, just give up to it. That's what I really liked. And what you talked about, the disposable nature of the sounds, that you want it to be, you're not really interested in reusing anything. It's here, it's gone, that's it, I've had enough of it, I've done with that. And it's a bit like, you know, the detritus that's left in the tube station. It's totally transient, and there's a transient nature. So it's almost like the transience of your work has just become embodied. So lots of my thoughts and feelings, and appreciation.
That's very good, Nicola. That's very good about the trans, because it is a particularly strange world at night time. But you know, because you're in a space which is very, very public, that we all kind of use, but no one else is in there. It's apart from me and often the foxes or the cats, you know, the animals that walk in because they don't obey the CCTV, which is, you know, it was just, you know, which is very, you know, they just really don't obey any of the kind of boundaries. So yeah. Which is very nice as well. So it's but I think that's I think there must be something of this continuous, the movement and the transient, which is I think with sound, and I suppose whether that can work with I mean with props. I think theatre props are probably quite similar as well, where they're used for a play and then they end up in the green room or in a cupboard or something. They're probably never, when someone's you know, technician's back home, you know, takes one of them home or something. That's probably and I think maybe that's, so I think maybe there is a connection with this, with the sound and the sculptural props. I was getting interested by anyway. And
it's almost like you could take used theatrical props and just make a piece out of whatever happens to be there, and that seems like partly what you're doing as well, picking up a mask and chucking it down, and then we'll have the next one and we'll just use whatever's there. In a way, that's all you've got at the station. You've just got what's there.
Yeah, and I think also just, I mean, it's that, and it's also in a bit what we're all kind of living through over the last year and a half of the state of lockdown. Is kind of what there is. I mean, things like Zoom, you know, it's been very new to me, and so, but in fact, it's good. It's kind of, it forces to change things a bit, because I suppose if we'd been in real life, I probably would have asked everyone to sit around in a circle and put a speaker in the middle and played a pre-recorded soundscape of the stories, which work. They work well, but I don't think they would have. I'm convinced they wouldn't have worked well via Zoom, because it would have just been, you have to sit there for half an hour and listen to. I don't think it would have. You know, I don't. So I think that's. So in a way, I think what we're having to do now, you know, is kind of use the materials that we have, because so many things we can't access. So we have to kind of use what we have, which is hard, which is really hard. But also, if we can embrace that, it's quite refreshing. It's quite exciting in a way.
You've become a stand-up performer.
Yeah.
You have.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Well, I suppose they say it's all the poor university lecturers are all becoming like chat show hosts, aren't they? You know, it's kind of, I mean, it's not easy.
Well, congratulations.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you. Albert, you have your hand up. Unmute. Albert, are you still there? Yeah. Yes.
Hello? Oh, sorry, I was struggling trying to unmute myself. Second, I'll just share the camera. Yeah, John, I enjoyed every moment of it. Yeah, it was really, really good. And because I live in Acton myself.
Okay.
It's funny because I won't be listening to Acton in the same way now, or even looking at it in the same way. For me, it was a moment of like a brainstorm, finding connections, and they're not questions as such, but maybe to share them with you. And one is Jean-Luc Nancy's idea of listening, and he poses a question, which is, what does it mean to listen with all our ears? Of course, in French, it may have a different connotation, but I'm just wondering what, in terms of listening, how do you approach that concept? And also, of course, it's because it's through Teams, and we're using Zoom, Teams. It's a bit like, although there is the visual, but your stories are sound-based. And I was wondering, how do you think the connection between, say, radio and your writing with sounds? In Germany, there's an experimental group, and it's called Radio Plays, Hörspiel, they call it, and they use all these sounds. And then your idea of noise as well. How do you regard noise as sound, or noise being important for things to be alive?
I mean, definitely in the sense of the listening is, I take a very physical, I'd say a physical approach where it's without sounding, when you say these things, it might sound corny, but as if it comes through your toes. If you walk quickly, you have a different relationship with sound than if you walk very slowly. So it's these little things. I mean, my ears, I failed the hearing test about 5 times at work anyway, so it's my hearing. I tend to listen, like, it doesn't always come in through my ears. It's coming in. I like to think through touch. Actually, I think through touch. So I need to kind of touch it to hear it. If that makes, I know it sounds, it's maybe not proper that, but it kind of is. That's how I kind of understand it. It's very much moving. I think it very much. I'm not standing still and kind of listening like this. I have no desire to do that. I like to kind of to walk through the sound, or to move through the sound. And with the radio plays, definitely. I mean, I love the medium of radio. I don't want. I'm wary of it. I'm wary of going down the angle of or kind of getting trapped to the kind of radio, like maybe a radio free kind of radio of the day kind of thing. But I do love that. Hildegard Westerkamp, I think, is she did she did absolutely fantastic work using her radio as she was moving when she was. I mean, it was quite a few years ago, but it was kind of moving on the beach while recording, and it's just terrific what she was doing. And then with the noise, I mean, I suppose it's kind of. I'm quite intrigued by sounds which are deceptive as well. So you have a sound of the sound of the points on the railway station, which sound like a duck or something. Which kind of I know they're railway points, but they sound like a duck crying. I kind of like this element of deception, I think. So we're not entirely sure whether it's sound foley or whether it's. But then I went to Surrey Docks Farm. With my supervisor Mandy, and we recorded they let us go into where the goats were, and it was just amazing, kind of being there for an hour, kind of recording the goats, or recording there was a big pig who we recorded and things like that. So I mean, I think it's I think kind of natural sounds and mechanical sounds. I think those combinations, maybe that's. I mean I think with noise. I mean the noise as well. I mean I get kind of there's the noise of someone on a train, talking on a phone. Why it hurts us so much is I think because you can't hear the other person talk. So it can really, be quite disturbing hearing someone talk on a mobile phone quite loudly, because I think it's because you can't hear the other person. Where it's not such a problem if you've got 2 people talking, but it's just so. I'm probably not completely answering the points you made, but that's what.
No, it was just strange. Also the idea of reading, as listening. I think the Sumerians had, I believe that the Sumerians didn't have any word for reading. It was actually listening to the mouth of the tablet. Yeah, so it's reading is listening. But thank you.
Thank you.
We've got time for maybe one more quick question. Nicola, was your hands up again, or do you want to come back on anything?
No,
or?
no, my hand's not up.
It's the legacy hand, I think. Anybody else have any questions or comments? There's some things in the chat that perhaps, John, you'll be able to go and look back at later. Anybody else like to say or ask anything before we wrap up? There's a couple of people typing frantically, I can see, so we'll let those messages come through. It's just praise and thanks, which is always nice to have. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. It's a nice way to spend a lunchtime. I hope everybody enjoyed the session as much as I did. Just a quick announcement to close that our next scheduled event is on the 19th of March, which is Nicola, give us a wave, is going to talk to us. And we have room for slots either before that or after. So if anybody else who's in the room now would like to host a session, it can be this kind of thing, it can be a paper, it's a really open format, then please get in touch with me and we will we'll book in some more events. Thank you very much, and I will close this off now. The session's been recorded and we'll make it available after.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.